Domestic violence is something that's very serious. It's one of our highest calls for service.
Law enforcement officials should understand what a frightening time this is for victims.
It takes victims many times before they get the courage to leave or ask a court for help.
The order of protection for him, it meant that he couldn't hurt me anymore.
The orders allow the cycle to be broken.
I met him in early 2011 and we started dating. He was a wonderful guy. He treated me very, very well. He was very good with my child, until about 6 months into it, it was perfect.
Over time, Harper's dream relationship turned into a nightmare. When her boyfriend became physically abusive, both Harper and her son were put in serious danger, and an order of protection was needed. An order of protection is a civil order issued by a judge to prevent an abuser from contacting or further abusing the victim. The order may impose limitations on how close the abuser may be to the victim, as well as specific prohibitions on telephone calls and personal contact. A victim can obtain an order of protection by filling out the paperwork at any courthouse and appearing before a judge. An order of protection allows police to respond more quickly to a scene. Having greater knowledge of the suspect's history and pattern of abuse also allows for a safer call response. Getting an order of protection may very well have saved Harper's life.
I got the order of protection to use as a tool to keep him away from me. He would contact me through any means available, social media, telephone, text. He would drive by my house. So once I got the order of protection in place, it really kept him at bay. I went from being contacted maybe 40 times a day to once a week through some shady social media name. And every time I was contacted at all, I was able to call the police. They documented it, it was on record, and it established a pattern of abuse.
Being able to document a pattern of stalking or abuse, especially when an order of protection is in place, enables law enforcement to make arrests more easily, potentially keeping abusers from attacking again. During this time, however, abusers often become more desperate.
The scary part of making the decision to get an order of protection is that it indicates the relationship is over to the abuser, and we know as advocates that is the most dangerous portion of a relationship, is when the victim decides to leave. I think that an order of protection helps to build a history for law enforcement personnel and court personnel to recognize the evolution of the relationship.
Orders of protection issued by the courts and successfully enforced by law enforcement allows an interruption of the domestic violence cycle. Having the order in place allows officers to enhance the level of safety to potential victims and to be able to prevent violence in the future.
An order of protection is a sheet of paper. It is an order by a judge, and even if it's served, it doesn't mean that the victim still doesn't have to take steps to make themselves safe. However, it's an important tool because you don't have to wait for another crime to be committed for the officers to act. The officers can make the arrest for violating the protective order.
The order of protection for him, it meant that he had to stay away from me, that he couldn't threaten me or contact me, or he would go to jail.
Law enforcement agencies across our valley take domestic violence very seriously. The stakes are simply too high.
And you never know what you're walking into when you're walking into a domestic violence call because of the emotions involved, because you don't know what just occurred. Orders of protection not only help keep the victim safe, but it helps keep officers safe. And we need to educate the public, continue to educate officers to end this cycle.
One of the messages I want to share with law enforcement is that order of protection can be a very valuable tool It not only enhances the level of safety to our community, but also could potentially enhance the level of safety to officers when they're responding to domestic violence. We should keep in mind that efficiency, accuracy, and timeliness of service of these orders could potentially save a life in the future.
Orders of protection allow the victim to call and police to respond immediately instead of waiting for the next violent act to occur.
911.
Yes, I'm calling. I'm calling. I'm at work, and he's stalking the parking lot. He's supposed to be wanted in Chummer, but they haven't picked him up yet, and he's breaking the order. I have an order of protection.
Your name is? Has he already been served?
Yes, he has. It's been a good month now.
Ma'am? Is he in there shooting? Is he in there shooting? Get up right now. Come here. Come around here. Oh my God, go out.
She didn't have to wait until he was beating down the door or beating her up. She was able to call the police when he was in the parking lot.
Orders of protection are often a crucial first step in the legal process for both the families and the courts.
Orders of protection are designed to keep the offender away from the victim. From a legal perspective, it separates a potential crime in the future, potential other domestic violence situation. So it gives law enforcement an opportunity to either help the victim to give them other information to seek other services or prevent a future crime.
We've had some great successes. What this means is that the victim does not have to go close to where the defendant is, call the police, have them come out, take the paperwork, and serve the defendant. We're helping keep victims safe.
And now that she's indicated to the abuser that she's afraid enough to get this order of protection, now's when it can really be frightening, and she really needs law enforcement to be on her side and recognize how scared she is.
My experience with law enforcement was very, very positive, especially the last time. The police officer who was called to the house after the attack was so supportive, so compassionate. He let me know that he was on my side. The officer was very, very supportive and walked me through every step of the process that night.
A lot of hard work is being done by law enforcement, the courts, and social service agencies in collaborating in the goal of ending domestic violence. Improvements are being made in how jurisdictions and agencies share information and carry out orders of protection. Central to this process is helping victims navigate the system during one of the most difficult times in their lives. This means being more proactive in helping the victims apply for the orders, enforcing the orders, and making the experience easier and safer for victims.
In the past, petitioners have been responsible for getting their orders of protection served. Today, law enforcement can take a much greater role in removing them from the process and enhancing the level of safety to our community.
Our advocates try to educate victims about the order of protection process, from going to court with them and helping them fill out the paperwork, assisting them with getting their thoughts together, to sitting with them during the hearing while the order is granted, and then making provisions to have the order served. We feel it's important to take the victim out of that process and do the legwork for them, so to speak. Oftentimes, if we can, we will have law enforcement serve the order of protection. And if we can't, if that's not possible, we will hire a process server to do that for them.
I would just like to really drive home the point how important it was that officer at that final call, believing that I would follow through, because he was right, I did. And it really scares me to think that I might not have if I wasn't taken serious, or if it was just another woman who wasn't going to press charges against her boyfriend. You know, that officer had a big part of changing my life and changing my son's life by how he reacted.
The response of an officer makes all the difference in the world when it comes to a domestic violence call. Reason being is the victim is already emotional and distraught, and so having an officer go in and be compassionate and actually just taking the time to listen to the victim, I think makes all the difference in the world, because then the victim feels that somebody actually believes her and will listen to her. So the officer taking the time to do that, and then taking the time to also give the victim some information, such as victim advocate information, or how to seek an order of protection, or maybe some other options to be able to get some other assistance, just allows the victim to know there's other options out there.
I feel like it's my duty because there's so many people that are still in that place. And they're raising children who are going to follow in that pattern, and we have to break it. It feels very alone there, you know, but there's so many people that have been through it. People that you would have no idea went through it until you're able to walk away from it and talk to others. My life is just, I mean, it's incredible. It's amazing. My son and I have a great relationship. He went through a lot of healing with me, and he is safe, and he feels safe finally. And, you know, for the first time in a long time, he knows we'll never go back because he'd heard it 100 times. You know, he knows that he won't have to scream for someone to stop hitting mommy. So that part is incredible.